Welcome to Discerning News, where we bring you current stories from a bigger picture perspective. The purpose is to inspire clarity and enthusiasm for your unique journey. No matter where we're at in the world, we get together to share with you these spiritual perspectives, Discerning News. So we've got Tiger Coll out in Vegas today. Hey, Tiger.
Hey there.
And I'm excited to be back together and sharing some of the interesting news of this week. You
Yeah.
agree?
Oh yeah, it's been great that we've been able to uh find the means to be able to regroup not only these stories but the feelings behind them and how to operate through them. Because that whole energy of I'm in this world but not of it. Uh, but I have to navigate through it in order to do what I've come to do. So I've really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to this call.
Yeah, especially because we just came off of Easter one, which was a whole thing in itself, right? So this will be really nice to share a little bit of what we picked up this week. So why don't you kick it off, Tiger, with what's the main thing you wanted to kind of share this week about?
Yeah, the first story I was just going to bring up, it's kind of a relatively light story. It's actually not a big story. It's the Vice President of the United States met with the Indian Prime Minister and to continue to work things out with their security and communications and their trade and all that kind of thing. And that's kind of that first story that I wanted to bring up. It felt good to get into that because it had touched on other things that are going on in the world. So obviously there's the big tariff things and how that's affecting the economies around the world and how teammates and alliances are working, and that affects a lot of things as well. So that's the first story I wanted to bring up. And to open, I just wanted to talk about the energy of timing. The first spiritual thing that stands out to me with this story is the energy of timing. And I need to be sensitive to my timing of things. I need to put my energy out, which a lot of what's been happening in this story, a lot of what's been happening is there's been this, big stirring of these tariffs and this kind of thing, and now they're wanting to make deals with each other and so forth. But the energy kind of went out first with the tariff thing. And then now we have delegates, in this case, the Vice President of the United States going to India, and to regroup and also figure out where they begin and end with each other. So to me, that going back to the timing, when I'm working with my fellow man, so to speak, working with acquaintances, working with allies, working with people I don't have a real affinity for, I need to make sure that I'm tuned in to what my purpose is, what I'm going to be a part of moving forward, right? So that's that thing about am I clear that I'm going to go to the grocery store, get my groceries that I need for the week, and then come back? Now, whilst that sounds silly, um, it's amazing as sensitive as I am, is if I'm not clear of what I'm doing, it just takes 2, 3 seconds to just, okay, this is what I'm going to go do. I open myself to possible accidents in the car, or I pick stuff up around people. I miss stuff that I meant to get at the grocery store. Um, and then I'll just go do this, and all of a sudden my timing gets blown. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen. If I put my energy out first, of clear of what I want and need, then it's like my timing, I have this natural innate timing of where I need to be, when I need to be, why I need to be, because I'm just flowing now. I'm fluid and flowing, right, with that energy. So the first thing of this story stands out to me is just being very loyal and sensitive to my own timing. Put my energy out there of what I want. They say in the good book says that my job is to have clear with what I want in my heart, and spirit and the universe will provide the steps. And so if I have that clarity of what I'm doing, even if it's something as simple that I can take for granted, as going to the grocery store or something on a large level. In this case, got the big trade deals between countries. But I need to have it clear, and then I can move in at the right time to do what's needed, have those positive conversations, know when to move out, right? Oh, okay, I'm not doing what I need to do here. Let me move out. So that's the thing that stands out to me, is that setting my energy and then moving with my timing. That's the first part of the story. How's that all? What do you think about that?
What do you feel like with that, Tom? You want to share next?
Well, one of the words that came to me about the story was the reset. And I recently heard this author, George Friedman, was on a Tucker Carlson episode, and he was talking about how there's going to be, we're in the middle of a storm right now, but there's going to be, peaceful times. And apparently this guy has been pretty good at predicting, what's going to happen. And comparing, and he really went through history, and he was comparing, like, one of the examples was the Second World War, how that was a big storm. And then in the 50s, things got all shifted in America, like a whole new, in the past, it's been something like, the automobile came into play, and that just shifted all of society. So without getting too much into it, this strikes me that when with trade and with working with India, it's kind of like a big reset, because they were a colony of the UK for a long time, and things have matured, and there's billions of people there. I forget how many billions, but it's the second most populated, I think, country after China. Maybe they have more. Anyway, it's in the billions. And so, they're good guys to be partners with, or to be able to have relationships with and be of service. And it seems like the time has come, and the emphasis is shifting away from one place to another.
Yeah,
So,
I guess what comes up for me energetically is those moments when things are either comfortable or uncomfortable, and can sometimes stimulate people within. So, and that goes down to especially, heads of state. Like, if you don't like Trump and you don't like Vance, and then they're going around the world, trying to get deals, and people are stimulated and they're uncomfortable. But the thing that I want to really emphasize is that it's often in those uncomfortable or challenging or obstacle moments of our lives when great things happen. And sometimes it might not be right when it's occurring, but looking back at, especially for myself, looking back at my life and going, wow, when I had some of the biggest challenges.
some of the storms in your life, you might say, huh?
Absolutely, the storms. And then, things shifted, and it was like exactly what needed to happen at that moment. And I think that's the other thing too, is the word trust is coming in. Really trusting in, who's on first base right now, who's up to home plate, who's going to be knocking it out, and who's going to be running. And for the last 4 years, America had Biden, and so we did what we had to do with that scenario, and so here we are with another one. So it's really just for the people listening out there, is how comfortable or uncomfortable are you with change?
Yep.
And
That's interesting. That's what that author said as well. He
No
goes,
way.
he said it's just that people are fighting it. It's just because they're uncomfortable with the change.
Yeah, I expanding on some of that, it doesn't matter to a degree who it is,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So if it was a different administration working with this, if the administration in India was different, there's just comes a point where the lines have to cut, the lines that have to come together and meet. And we're in that auspicious time where all this has to be reset, like you're bringing that point up, Tom. So one way or another, this is going to happen. That's number
Right.
one. But the other thing that stood out to me was coming in fresh. I need to come in fresh with my friends and not so friendly friends. I need to be fresh in that. In other words, I need to be clear, clean and clear with who I am, where I begin and end, what I want, and what I need. And without that clarity, what happens is I carry in all the old baggage, and the other person I'm working with will carry their baggage. And anytime I make an alliance, anytime I'm communicating with people, if I'm communicating with you, then true communication is where I come into you and you come into me, right? That's true communication. We are passing through to each other these ideas and concepts and feelings and so forth. That's true communication. So if I want to make an alliance with someone, which is glorified way to say we're connecting right there, right then and there, then I need to be crystal clear with who I am, where I begin and end, and what I need and want. And while that sounds like a bit of like full on, like, God, Tiger, you're going to go meet somebody on the street. You got to go through this big checklist before you meet somebody on the street. Well, no, okay. I'm not talking about, having to have some big head trip about it. I'm just saying being clear in yourself, right? With where you begin and end, and that way it makes it easier to work with people. If I'm not clean and clear, right? And I go back to what I said earlier, I am going to bring all of the not so good habits mixed in with them into their good and not so good habits, right? So now we've got this big mosh pit of stuff happening when in reality, I just came to work with you and you came to work with me on something pure and good, right?
Well, I think that's a challenge right there. Really, that's where I think the collective challenge is at this moment is working on yourself. Like that, it comes back to me first. I mean, I have to do my inner work. I have to find out my clarity, my direction in order before I can work with anybody else. And most people, for those listening out there, most people recognize that most people haven't done any inner work, and it's maybe not even in this lifetime, right? It might be a couple lifetimes down the road, but recognizing and giving and honoring just where people are at, because people are all over the place.
Well, I'd say that, there's times where everyone's successful at something, in terms of a relationship or a situation they're in, and it could be a simple one, it could be a complex one. And in those times, they were probably very clear about where they began and end, what they wanted, and they were just focused on the thing, that purity of that idea. So there's times where we get stimulated to bring our baggage in or not be clear, probably based on those habits and attitudes we pick up from our folks in the first 7 years. And some of them are good and some of them are not so good, but that's kind of the goal of life, is to let go of those old habits that really don't fit anymore. And every once in a while, I like this idea of reset, how you've got to get to a point in life, sometimes in your life, where things just have to almost shock reset. And it's interesting because the fellow that I was listening to being interviewed today, he was saying the same thing. He goes, all this is going to happen anyway. It doesn't matter if it's this guy in office or that guy in office. There'll be a different style in terms of who delivers what their policies are, or maybe a different direction. But the reset is coming, which is something we've heard for many years.
We're also feeling.
Yeah. Although the good news is that reset is going to lead to better times. And it was great to hear him talk about, just think about in your own life, or I can think about times where I had these resets that, like you were saying earlier, Teresa, I didn't really, maybe I wasn't seeing how good this was at the time I was going through it. But later I went, I'm so glad that happened that way, because here I am now. And reminds me of something that you shared with me once, Tiger, where, not to get too judgmental about whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, because it might take some time to find out, how it all works out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in my wrap up for this, I suppose that all those points were really, really good. And it is important for me not to bring in any baggage when I'm starting something fresh. it's I was another leader reminded me about where that if I'm starting something new, even though and I'm anticipating some challenges coming, right? And this is the real world. We need to use our intellect to analyze and dissect a bit. We don't want to walk into trouble. But at the same time, I need to bring that positive energy forward so I don't have some ideology to come and affect things or pollute things that I'm starting new. And so that's where the power of positive thinking comes in. Not so much where it's toxic positivity, where I'm not going to look at all the challenges and not look at reality, but it is, okay, here's what I want to do. This is what I want to accomplish. Here are the pluses and minuses. I need to be aware of these things. But now I'm going to, do that energy of everything that can go right is going to go right. And anything that does come at me, whether it's not so great or great, it is part of my destiny, and I'm going to use it to go forward and have that reset and have that positive outcome. Because if that person is not the one that I actually needed, they will help lead me to the person that I needed. And that is that energy that I need to be a part of. Otherwise, besides all the stuff I can do to myself, I'm setting up other people to not be their best. So that's my conclusion on it. It was interesting. It was a light story, but I think it was just indicative of that energy of, like you're bringing up, that reset, that having that clarity, not being partisan about things in my mind, so that I'm clear about what I need and want, and then also having that energy of crystal clear communication.
Sounds good.
When you arrived back, you were enthusiastic to be here. If you've lost some of that enthusiasm, there's a way to reawaken it. It's by embracing a bigger spiritual picture of your life as a soul and igniting the feeling of freedom within. If you're ready and needing some more enthusiastic mojo for yourself, then follow the link in the show notes to access a free video series created by the Wayshowers College and get ready to start feeling more clarity, hope, and freedom within.
All right, Tom. Well, you're up next. What you got? What's been what have you been looking at this week in the news?
Well, one of the stories that struck me was the Supreme Court is evaluating a lawsuit by a group of parents that want to be able to opt out in public schools of LGBTQ literature, and they want to be able to handle that at home. And I guess in the past, in this particular case, they were able to opt out for their kids and leave it to the parents to talk about those kinds of issues. And one of the reasons that it kind of caught my interest was that the energy behind this, and Teresa and I were talking about it the other day, where I said, I certainly probably personally relate to being a parent that wants control or the input of when my kids or when young people that I'm in charge of get exposed to certain ideas and have them presented in the way that I feel is important. And I think it impinges upon my freedom and my good judgment and my maturity for someone else to say, no, we have a better way of dealing with this. So that's my preference. But I thought about it and I went, those teachers that are pushing that they want to be able to share this information with the students, there's a lot of true concern there. There's some concern that they want kids to feel comfortable in their own skin, no pun intended. And it just struck me that whilst I can have my ideas as to what I feel is appropriate, that the other side is not necessarily coming from a mean or negative or mean-spirited. I mean, sometimes they are, right? But actually, there's lots of people who think it's a good idea and they have concern, So now we're moving through a system, in our courts, which the Supreme Court will make up their minds one way or the other. But I think that's what I really wanted to talk about, or what I felt like behind things spiritually, is that recognizing that a lot of what people want to do is based on a concern they have, but maybe they don't know how to implement that, or that's where we fight over the interpretation of the concern. Anybody got
Yeah,
anything to say about that one?
I do. This is can be for some people a nice hot topic.
Yeah.
It can be a moral issue to some. For myself, I always come in and this is what I always share with other leaders as well as people on the street. The soul has no color, no sex, no creed, no language. And so what that basically means is pretty much almost from the beginning, we're talking about preferences. I'm talking about my preferences. You're talking about your preferences. We're talking about preferences because I can't take the physical body with me when it's time to go home, right? It returns to the dust and the soul goes back to the source, So this all comes down to me about the preferences. And to me, having freedom is important. There's that liberty point of it where as a human being, I want people to have that liberty. But freedom isn't an inner thing. So liberty on the outside, freedom on the inside. They're the same thing, but one's more material and one's more spiritual for the sake of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the interesting thing about this particular story is it's not forcing someone to live a certain lifestyle. If I have an alternative lifestyle, it's not some religion trying to force something on top of me. This is about people who want to opt out of the system.
Right.
Right. So already, to me, this is starting to smell funny. This is starting to smell funny to me because, number one, the system is there so that we all get along. Right. And if, as a community, if we can't agree on everything, then we need to get out of our preferences, come down to what's important. If we can't agree on what's important, then we need to come down even further to the foundation and say what's essential. If we're going to be working together, what's essential? So in the school system, these teachers are wonderful teachers. They're doing the best they can. But when the system starts to want the preferences in there ahead of what's essential, right? Reading, writing, arithmetic, right? These kinds of things. Music could be an important, but not necessarily an essential. But why am I bringing that up is because we as sensitives, forget the story for a minute. If I'm not clean and clear the difference between my preferences and what is essential and or important, boy, I'm going to have a lot of troubles. I am setting myself up to be at loggerheads, as they say, real confrontation with a lot of people because I start living in my preferences and everybody else has their own preferences. So I lose the common denominator. I lose my ability to start connecting with the people I came to work with. And even if that's 1 minute at the laundromat where, hey, yeah, you got to change for $1? Sure. Even if it's at that, I lose that exchange because now preference dominate, right? Well, I don't like that one because they don't have hair like me. Or they don't have a preference of how I like to hug people or, whatever. Now I've got into this big deal, right? And I can't even do what I came to do spiritually. So the first thing they got a couple things on this story. It's a good story that the first thing for me is being real sensitive that I don't allow my preferences to get in the way of what's important, and certainly not in the way of what's essential. That's the
Yeah,
first
so
thing.
yeah, that's an interesting perspective there.
Love it.
Because the word I would say is choices.
Hmm.
Beyond preferences, because of course, for me, choices are, do I choose to do I have the ability to choose that for, we'll say in this case, my child. And I know for myself, when this story came up and just tuning into it energetically, there is a primal instinct within moms and dads of protecting the children. And now, especially when they're young. And so recognizing when people have their preferences or have, maybe they're biased, like you said, maybe they're a lesbian teacher couple and they want to bring that into the school. Well, it also goes back to, you could also take your child to a Christian school. There's other alternative measures too, but back to that primal instinct and those primal energetic, protect the young, protect the innocent, allow them to develop and explore. And I even heard recently there was something like some kids were being kind of groomed towards that, and then by the time they were like, I don't know, 8 or 9, they were saying they were bisexual. And like, how does a kid even know what that even is at that age? So
Well, and probably most kids are bisexual at 7 or 8 or something,
right, yeah, but I mean, but it's they're
in a
trying
sense, in a sense.
yeah, but they were sharing their ideology on them,
Yeah.
versus letting them choose. So that's just the part that I want to bring up around choices and preference is there's an energy of that primal behind it, of protecting the young. And same as if I was a lesbian couple and I wanted to protect my little child, so she grew up and was very open to everything, then that's a preference, right?
What struck me was that, that common denominator, feeling one with all, requires respect for everybody's point of view. And I guess we have to work with what's the common denominator and what's the priority. So I'm not here to pass judgment on LGBTQ people at all. It's more like, how do we have, if we're going to have a communal system, or we're going to have a system to benefit everyone, how, what I heard you say earlier, Tigers, let's keep that common denominator in place so that we all feel respected and that we all feel, we can tune into that one with all, that positive, loving, kind, sharing vibration.
Yeah, I mean,
You're not in it when you start arguing over an ideology that's getting you all heated up. Now
Yeah.
it's becoming a moral issue, and I've moved on.
yeah, and the key thing for me, and I'm going to move a fair bit past the story into the feeling for me, is just number one. Teresa, you're bringing up that beautiful point I was going to make, so thank you for getting it out there first. Is all this does, it helps me identify what's important to me and where I need to be when I need to be. Because there are groups, there are people who will be attracted in the community to learn certain lessons, right? And so that's the beauty of the system that the American system has, is that it allows so much diversity within the different communities around the United States, right? As opposed to trying to have one rule that fits for everybody, kind of thing. So it's good in the sense that if this is not something that parents want to have for their children, then it helps start to notify them, oh, I can try to make a change here, or I need to find a different community, right? So as long as the moral issue is not front and center, it helps me with my direction. It helps me find the area I need to be in so that I can learn and grow the way I need to learn and grow. And in this case, with the people that they're responsible, the souls that they're responsible for, these young people and the parents, right? But even more is it comes back to the last piece you're saying, Tom, is that when it comes to working with people in the community, I need to have a good, solid inner standard, right? And that solid inner standard, at least for me, and what the training that was passed on to me, is self-respect,
Mm-hmm.
human dignity, and live and let live. Then from there, I can get into, the different things with different people or different groups. But having that sense of live and let live, human dignity, self-respect, right? That starts to at least set the stage now that I can work with anybody. I can do what I've come to do.
Yeah.
I can move into that community. I can move into that community. Now we have a common denominator. So I guess my last piece on this part is just how important it is that everything is helping me. I can get stuck in my own preferences, my own ideology, and think that things are hurting me, right? They're against me. No, the truth is, especially spiritually, but even as a practical matter, all these things are helping me point clearly of what I need to work on personally and also where I need to be. If this is not my community, let me find my community. And just for the people on the social media or something, I'm not saying run away from other people. I'm not saying isolate from a community just because I that I disagree with them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I need to find the groups and people so that I can learn and grow for that lesson. And what will happen is I'll outgrow that, and then I'll go find the next thing. So I need to rub elbows with different ideas, different people, different understandings, so I get what I need. But that energy of human dignity, self-respect, live and let live, that's the base standard that I can count on in this material world.
Yeah, and I guess for myself, the one thing that comes up about all this is also that, as a soul, each of us has set up opportunities for growing.
Right.
And lessons, and some of them have some of them are obstacles, some of them are maybe are different, the opposite of obstacles. Maybe they're a little more pleasant to get through, but they're all a learning experience of, like we're talking about preferences, boundaries, where do you begin and end with the rights of others and your rights, and opting in and opting out. So it's really those opposing forces, but recognizing that everything is set up absolutely perfectly for this moment in time and for where all these people are moving through. Because who knows, I mean, as a group, these parents that came together, they might have had some revenge or something from the past that they brought in to work through in this scenario and to heal from it. I mean, we have no idea what they're all working on. So there's that aspect too of whenever I see something like this going on in different areas, right? There's all kinds of people that hate, people that love, in all kinds of scenarios between political and religion and yada yada. But recognizing that it's all really perfectly set up for what those souls have to go through. And I think about myself, and when I had children too, there were things that happened with bullying, and I had to go into school and talk to the board, and oh my gosh, it was like a big deal. And so in recognizing that that's something I had to go through at that moment, and now it's about LGBTQ, or it's about sexual preferences, or boys being in the locker room, or whatever it's about at this moment in time, it's set up perfectly for the people who are going through it.
So my final comments would be everything's a means to an end. It's not the end in itself. And I love that live and let live. And some of these are experiments in how people are finding out about their own self-respect and how to respect other folks. So let's take a quick break.
When you gravitate towards trust, life moves with more grace and ease. One way is staying in the now and mastering your inner world, those psychic perceptions that show up through feelings, knowings, hearing, and seeing. If you are ready for more clarity for your direction in life, by honoring your time and trust, check out the link in the show notes for our next Intuition Now Masterclass, where we explore your inner abilities and support you in getting your own answers and start trusting in yourself.
We're back. And Teresa's got a favorite part of this
Inspirational story.
of this
Dun,
day.
dun, dun.
What do you
Well-
got for us today, Teresa?
Well, this one goes to a diner in Pittsburgh called Eat and Park. There was a lady and her son that went to this diner. And when they went in, they saw an elderly waitress who was having some physical problems, but was, moving around and helping people in the diner. And they overheard some of the things this lady was saying, and she was basically saying how she has problems getting around, her back's hurting, she can't retire because she gets her Social Security check, and it's under $1,000 a month, so it doesn't pay all the bills, so she has to keep working this job that's really a lot of stress on her body. And this really hit this lady and her son big time, especially the lady. And so she went through TikTok and put out a post basically saying, look, if anything in my life goes viral, I want this to go viral. I want to help this lady. So she put out a plea to her community that absolutely went viral. And money started coming in, and she actually had to start a GoFundMe movement for this lady named Betty, who was the waitress. And it started out to be like literally over $100,000. And at the end, over $300,000 was actually raised, like about $329,000. So, and it turns out that this lady, Betty, who was the waitress, was, obviously awestruck that this happened, and she's having financial issues in her family. And so this is something that she was just beyond excited about, that a stranger would help her like this and all these other strangers. So just a really great story that I wanted to bring up today. When I found it, I'm like, oh, this is a heartwarming one. So what's your thoughts on that story?
Well, for me, I just love the fact that communities come together. It's another form of a community coming together, probably people all over the country, to help out another person who's sincerely doing the best they can and doing their 50%. And I got a kick out of one of her comments in the article where she said, I'm 81 years old and I'm still faster than all these young whippersnappers.
Whippersnappers, yeah.
So, and she
That aged her a
probably
little
is.
bit.
She probably is, So, because she's directed in service, and she said she loves doing what she does. It's just that she's got, she's getting older, so she's getting aches and pains and creaky and stuff like that. So, yeah, a beautiful, hopeful. I know the feeling I get from it is like, there's hope. That as long as I communicate, you'd be surprised at what come my way to help me through certain situations if I'm doing the best I can to be of service.
Yeah. To me, this is this immediately, when you brought this story up, Teresa, I immediately started thinking about karma.
I had that thought too. It's funny.
What's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah.
That this happened. I mean, because there's plenty of people who don't have this kind of fortune happen to them. So like, what's going on there? So obviously there's something going on there. That's the first impression that I got. The other thing that I tuned into was what you said about community on this, and how a lifetime of service, how that affects people, right? How that affects people. So this energy here is a reminder about when I'm outflowing, when I'm just truly giving of myself, giving of my time and my energy, just giving. That is the essence of love. And that's why, at least for me, and I feel in this, the programs that we work with, service, the key word service, not servant, service, is a powerful, powerful thing, because it emulates the vibration of love. And love is giving. Love is giving. Just flat out simple. Love is giving, period. Right? There's nothing after it. You don't need to put a bunch of things with it. it's giving. And so that vibration of this lovely lady, Betty, being of service, here she is. How many years has she been doing that, right? And now all of a sudden there's this energy of the service coming back, right? Wanting to pay that, and all that energy she paid forward, here's this energy, right? And so to me, that number one, it's that energy of there's something more going on there for her. There's something there. Betty, if you're listening, just be cautious. When you get money, you have a lot of friends all of a sudden.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But all that aside, it's a great story. There's more to share on it, but the first impressions was, number one, there's something going on there at a bigger picture for her to work with that, right? And the second thing was just the energy of service, just giving. And like you're saying, I noticed the same thing in the story about, I can run in circles around these whippersnappers, because she's of service. So many young people will come in and they haven't learned what service really is. And here's this person who's been doing it for how long, when, the beginnings of all this kind of thing, it's tremendous. And if anything else, I hope she puts on a 5-minute YouTuber every week of how to be of service to people. It's a great story.
Yeah, and for myself, I was actually inspired by the word love. So we'll have the link down below that you can watch this, or you could read it and actually watch the TikToks, because the energy that came off of this mom who created who put forth the TikTok videos, her name is Tammy. It was so inspiring, and it was so heartfelt, because she had tears, and she was really like telling how each time she went in to share with Betty, how much money they've raised, like she was almost, like consumed by just so much passion and happiness. And it inspired me so much, because in the world, there's both sides. And we need both sides. We need the dark and we need the light, whatever you want to say, the positive, the negative. And this is just one of those stories where, God, this does happen. Like, things like this do happen in the world. And so just like that one, we talked about with the ladies in Africa getting those carts and, and being inspired to raise their vibration to now they can be like, leaders of their household and stuff. I mean, this is the same type of thing, in the sense that, Betty's going to be now given some money where maybe she can retire early, or maybe she can get herself, some help with her body or treatment. Yeah. So it's just that love and that ability to just, when someone sees a situation, they just act on it. It's so beautiful, because that, I've done that my whole life in certain things. Like, I just move, and this lady just moved. She left there. She actually left her a $40 tip, all the money she had in her purse, and goes, I'm going to help this lady. Went outside and did a video. And then just started, the energy just started. So it was just a beautiful situation, and a beautiful, action of being in love, vibration. Anything else right there?
Yeah, just to add something real quick there, but I know you're eager there, but I don't want to lose it here. I'm glad you shared that, Teresa, because I've had people come up to me and share, like, how do I know when to get involved? How do I know when to share or communicate? How do I know when to give the gal or guy on the street $1, right? Because sometimes you're concerned about it. They're going to take that dollar and blow it up into their arm or booze or something, right? So my predecessor, the founder of the program, I had this question asked of him, right? I'm giving away secrets here, so everybody pay attention. We're in a big program, and someone says, how he was talking about just sharing and giving of yourself, and, don't be afraid to step out and do those things, just like this lady did for the Betty. So the one question was, well, how do I know when to do that and I'm not getting myself involved in someone else's business, right? Like, there are times when the best thing I can do is actually leave it alone, right? That there is such a thing. So well, how do I know? And so his response, he just looked at the person who was asking the question. He says, well, how do you know when to go to the toilet? And we all had a good
No.
laugh about it, and it was so kind of out of the box, but it was so proper to say. I mean, well, because I truly feel it. I truly feel it. And so that's why I go back to that energy of which we kind of started with earlier in our episode here, is knowing where I begin and end, what my needs are, knowing what my wants are, because I'm coming from that pivot point that's solid. And then when I am moved to give or moved to help or moved to be involved, it's genuine. Like clearly this lady tapped in to something that was genuinely needed. Because how is it that she could do that TikTok and then all these people with a stranger starts putting money in, and bam, here this 300,000 plus dollars show up in a short amount of time. So you're hitting the mark, the right place, right time, doing what needs to happen. But that starts with a pure feeling. So that's the first thing I just wanted to say, is that how do I know when to give? Is when I really genuinely feel it. It's not just somebody, oh, the poor lady, she's just, she's so old and her arthritis. Gosh, somebody should help her. Maybe I should do that. That's an intellectual idea. Of course, I'm aware of that intellectually, but do I really feel moved, right? And this woman clearly did. So that's the first thing. And then the last piece for me on this, and you stimulated there, Teresa, is focus. Focused light, focused energy. It is time after time, story after story, that when we see these people do incredible things, because they focus their energy. They aren't off in fairy tale land. They're not off worrying about stuff. They have a mission. And so to me, to bring that home to myself and maybe some of you listening, is imagine what I could do. Imagine what you could do if you just started focusing that light of yours, right? That light that you are, imagine that focus, bringing that energy like a laser beam into focus, right? And that's what we talk about, the cleansing technique that we do in your workshops that you all do. That cleansing technique is an example of taking my energy and start to focus it. So when I'm out there being of service to people, when I'm out there working with different things in my life, whether I'm washing the dishes or I'm sharing with a bunch of people on a podium, or it doesn't matter how little or how big someone thinks it is my energy together? Am I bringing that energy of focus in, so that the light that I am, the aura, the continence that I am, now has a channel? It has the energy to move forward and do something wonderful and great, like this story here. And now we'll see how it works. If that lady is able to take the same focus and put it into her own life, right? That'll be the test to see, or whether it was just something that was karmic, with this one Betty, happening. But the point is that energy of focus and bringing all my aura, bringing all my energy into something clean and clear, and then it's amazing what can happen.
Anything you want to say to him?
No, I think that about sums it up.
Okay, well, yeah, I totally agree with that. And so let's let's look back at this episode and just chat a little bit about some of the commonalities it had, because we like to kind of bring it all together. And what did you kind of pick up, Tom? I know what I picked up.
Well, I'd like you to share first.
I picked up the energy of love.
Right.
Loving being alive, feeling fulfilled, finding ways to come together with other people and doing great things in the world, like, the common goal of coming together with other nations and coming together, as groups to move forward for the next generation. So it's really that's the real key for myself of this whole sharing, is around the energy of love.
I guess for me, it's that there's always solutions, and to recognize that, it's not all like, oh, they're evil or they're bad and we're good. And, as soon as I get caught in that, I'm getting into moral issues. And if I just accept, but I do feel something like, it feels good to respect myself and respect others, and that live and live vibration is a beautiful, that's what we're all sort of, a lot of us are, looking for. We resonate with that. And also just getting back to that bigger picture that I'm a soul here to learn and grow. And so whatever's going on around me in the world, it's an opportunity for me to rise above it or work with that situation or reset and, go on from there. Even just talking this way, it's so nice, because I hope that some of the folks out that are listening feel the same way, that just to get back to, oh yeah, there's a bigger picture here. All these troubles I'm having or my daily worries are not the whole point. I'm here for a reason. I'm here to learn and grow. And when it's all said and done, everything will be okay.
As the Earth's crust shifts and changes, our lives do the same. One way to maneuver through the small and large moments that shake us to the core is by reviving your connection to spirit, gathering ways to cleanse your energy field, embracing spiritual awarenesses to give you a bigger picture, and knowing that you are not alone on your journey can be a great support. The Soulquake Survival Guidebook is a great companion to meet you where you're at and support reviving your connection to spirit in earth-shaking times. Get your copy today through Amazon Worldwide in paperback, ebook, or in audio, and begin embracing more clarity, inner peace, and enthusiasm for your life and what you've come to do.
Yeah. And I can relate to both of those. I'd say my summation and the common denominator that's moving through a lot of these stories for me is the phrase, knowing where I begin and end. That it seems to me that there's the common place of all these stories and others, we filtered through other stories that we just didn't put on this episode. And it seems that if I'm clean and clear with where I begin and end, I know what's me and not me, how much more I can do, how better I can do in my situations. So if I know where I begin and end, I can be of service and I can be moved at the right time. I can be a vessel. I can be obedient to spirit and my true feelings and for my own needs and wants, for my own goals, right? Because I know where I begin and end. I can make that new alliances with people, and they can get what they need and I can get what I need because I know where I begin and end. And if I know where I begin and end, I can be able to work with others who may not think like me, because we can come back to a common denominator that we can all work with. And if that's not going to happen, at least then it's upfront and clear, and we can leave in peace. You get to go that way, I get to go that way, rather than me creating another conflict and war and have to clean up some karmic sting all over again, right?
Yeah, centuries later or something.
Yeah, it's like, oh, now I got to go fix this again. So that energy of knowing where I begin and end, and that's a kind of pseudo code for, who am I, where did I come from, and where am I going? Just having those simple things clear, and it's amazing how much that cleans things up, where I can work with so many people because I just know where I begin and end. And my wrap up to this is just, I had someone once, we were doing a project, and we were kind of starting to wrap it up, the project, and we closed up the project, and someone said, hey, let's go do this now, right? Some fellowship or something like that. And the bottom line was, one of the people that were helping us says, nope, I need to be someplace else. And it was a bit of a surprise and shock at first, but then I realized, wow, that person's really loyal to themselves. They have another appointment to go be of service over here, and that would have done some, put them off their target. So Anyway, just that energy of knowing where I begin and end is the common denominator.
Awesome. And so this was another absolutely fabulous exploration of spiritual perspectives.
Sure was.
And discerning the news. So we thank you all out there for listening in. And if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you comment below. We'd love to hear your comments. Also, share it freely with your friends and family. And we will all be back next week. And just remember that whenever you're out there and you're hearing some news going on, just contemplate the spiritual perspective that might be going on behind the scene, the bigger picture. And that might give you some clarity on what's really going on. See you guys next week.
See you soon.
To keep the enthusiasm going, please like, subscribe, or comment below. We would love to hear from you.